The vast council hall stretched endlessly, its walls glowing with soft light that shimmered across the polished floors. Representatives from dozens of alien civilizations filled the high benches, each species bringing its own strange presence, tall, short, winged, or scaled. Their faces showed a mix of excitement, concern, and suspicion. At the center of all eyes was the human delegation, small in number, but standing with quiet confidence. Humans, despite their ordinary appearance compared to the fantastical forms around them, carried a presence that somehow demanded attention. For years, humanity had been under scrutiny. Other civilizations whispered about humans behind closed doors, debating whether they were reckless, dangerous, or simply unpredictable. Humans were new to the galactic stage compared to older species, and their sudden rise in technology and influence had made many uneasy. Now, in this chamber, a final decision was about to be made, one that would determine whether humans would continue as active participants in interstellar affairs or be forced into isolation. The council speaker, a four-armed alien whose eyes glowed like molten amber, banged the ceremonial gavel to signal the start. "We convene today to decide the fate of the human race," the speaker announced. "They have grown faster than expected, and many of our members feel they are a threat to the balance of power." Humans did not react. They stood silently, their hands folded, their faces calm. Some of the younger aliens in the room whispered among themselves, unsure if this silence was arrogance or fear. Others, older and more cautious, recognized it as something entirely human, a quiet patience, a refusal to play into the theatrics that dominated alien politics. One representative stood, a tall being with shimmering scales and eyes that constantly shifted color. "They've broken treaties," the alien hissed. "Their fleets patrol areas without our permission, and their scientists interfere with natural systems we guard. They cannot be trusted." Another representative, smaller and winged, flapped nervously. "We've given them warnings. They ignore our requests. This is no longer about diplomacy. We must act before it is too late." The humans continued to remain silent. Not a single word escaped their lips. No gesture, no sign of argument, no pleading. They simply waited, standing upright and steady, as though time itself could bend around their patience. Finally, the council began its vote. Aliens from one species after another raised symbolic tokens, some glowing, some humming, as their decision was counted. Expel humanity from the council and restrict their access to interstellar trade and communication networks. Read the final tally. The verdict was clear. Humans were to be exiled. The chamber erupted in murmurs, some members celebrating the decision, others uneasy at its finality. The humans, however, did not protest. They did not argue. They simply turned as a single unit and walked out of the council hall. Their silence was deafening. Every alien in the room felt it, an unsettling emptiness where anger or fear might have been expected. Some tried to follow, hoping to provoke a reaction, but the humans did not even glance back. They walked with purpose, leaving only a quiet impression behind, as if saying that they understood the decision, but it would not change who they were. Outside the hall, the human delegation returned to their ships. There was no shouting, no clanging of equipment, no emotional display. The crew moved with calm efficiency, securing their vessels and preparing for departure. Even the younger human members, barely old enough to vote, understood the gravity of the moment. There was no bitterness, only focus, only quiet determination. Back in the council, debates raged late into the cycle. Why didn't they argue? One alien demanded, pacing in frustration. Why didn't they fight? They could have tried to persuade us. They could have threatened retaliation. Another shook their head, voice low. They do not play by our expectations. That is what makes them unsettling. Their silence is stronger than any argument. For the humans, leaving in silence was not a sign of defeat. It was a statement of control. In one simple act, refusing to react, they had forced the council to confront something they had not considered. Humans did not need approval, nor did they require the council's recognition. Their presence in the galaxy was not dependent on anyone else's opinion. By walking away quietly, they demonstrated a strength that words could never convey. As the human fleet moved away from the council's space station, many alien observers continued to whisper. Some were filled with contempt, certain that humans would crumble under isolation. Others, more careful and perceptive, felt unease growing in their minds. There was something different about humans, something that could not be measured by votes, treaties, or appearances. And now, having been dismissed, that difference would begin to show itself in ways the council had not anticipated. The humans returned to their colonies in the outer sectors. Their arrival was quiet, almost invisible. There was no celebration, no announcement. Communities simply resumed their lives, working on research, agriculture, exploration, and defense. Yet beneath the surface, plans were being laid, strategies being refined. Human leaders discussed the council's decision, not with anger, but with clarity and purpose. Every action was deliberate, every step measured. For humans, silence had a purpose. It was not emptiness. It was patience. They understood the galaxy well enough to know that reactions could be more powerful than words. And they had learned long ago that waiting, observing, and preparing could achieve what shouting and threats never could. Meanwhile, the council began to feel the first stirrings of regret, though they did not yet recognize it. Trade negotiations that once relied on human expertise started to encounter delays. Research collaborations that humans had led quietly collapsed without explanation. Small crises, once managed effectively by human crews, began to escalate. Observers noted the absence of human voices and actions, and unease grew into worry. The council members had made their decision, thinking humans would beg, argue, or protest. They had assumed humans were like them, ruled by ego, pride, or fear. But humans had shown something alien to the council's understanding: restraint, control, and patience beyond what any of them expected. And now, the silence of humanity hung over the galaxy like a shadow. Quiet yet profound. Back among the human fleets, leaders continued their work in secret, knowing that the council's decision had only revealed a small part of what they were capable of. Their technology, their fleets, and their colonies were more advanced than most species realized. Every move the council thought they were dictating had already been anticipated and accounted for. In their chambers, human commanders spoke to each other in measured tones. "The council will soon see what patience can do," one said. "We do not need to prove ourselves with anger or threats. They will regret underestimating us in their own time." Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, quiet witnesses to human resolve. Each vessel, each crew member moved with purpose. The galaxy continued its business, unaware that a new chapter in human history was quietly beginning, one that would test the assumptions of the council and every species that had judged humans too quickly. Even among humans, there was no sense of superiority or vengeance. The goal was simple: prepare, endure, and act when the moment was right. Silence, they knew, could be more powerful than words. It could unsettle, confuse, and even frighten those who believed they were in control. And so, the humans waited, as calm and steady as the stars around them, knowing the galaxy would one day see the consequences of their patience. The council, meanwhile, had returned to their chambers, expecting the universe to continue as before. But a quiet, unspoken tension had begun to spread. The absence of humanity, the silence of those who had once been present, was already changing the balance. And no one in that room fully realized that the seeds of regret had already been planted. As the first cycle of silence passed, many council members started to notice small disruptions in their operations. Ships that had relied on human technology failed in unexpected ways. Communication networks began to experience delays and errors. Research stations lacked coordination. The realization slowly dawned. Humans had not just withdrawn. They had left a vacuum that could not be easily filled. Humans, of course, noticed these changes too. But they did not celebrate. Their work continued in silence, deliberate and careful. Every plan, every innovation, every strategic move was designed not to retaliate, but to ensure that when the time came, they would act with precision and purpose. Their silence was not emptiness. It was strategy. And so, the galaxy entered a new era. One where the absence of humans was more significant than their presence had ever been. And the Council, having dismissed them with a wave of their hands and a vote of confidence, had no idea how much they had underestimated a species that understood the power of patience, restraint, and quiet strength. The first part of the story ends here, with humans leading without protest, silent but unbroken, setting the stage for events that would soon force the Council to face the consequences of their decision. After leaving the Council, humans did not rush to announce their next moves. They returned quietly to their colonies spread across distant sectors of the galaxy. Their fleets moved with calm precision, avoiding unnecessary attention, yet every action was purposeful. Life in the colonies appeared ordinary on the surface. Children laughed in playgrounds, workers tended to farms, scientists continued experiments, and ships quietly docked and undocked from starports. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary to an outside observer. Yet beneath that calm surface, humans were anything but idle. Every colony had a network of communication and observation that allowed them to monitor distant systems, including the Council's territories. Humans knew they had been underestimated. The Council had expected protests, retaliation, perhaps even fear. Instead, humans had chosen silence. That silence was their weapon. As the weeks passed, the first signs of the Council's unease began to appear. Trade routes that humans had maintained for decades experienced unexpected disruptions. Systems that had relied on human technology and expertise started to encounter problems they could not fix. Alien species that once depended on human coordination felt a growing sense of worry. Ships vanished or failed to respond on time. Supply lines slowed, and confusion spread. The Council initially dismissed these incidents as minor setbacks. "Humans are gone," one member said, voice confident. "It is only a matter of time before the galaxy adjusts." But the longer humans stayed silent, the more the Council began to feel the weight of their absence. Every problem that arose was quietly traced back to humanity. They did not have to act to make their absence felt. Their withdrawal was more powerful than any confrontation. Human leaders observed all of this without comment. They did not boast. They did not threaten. Instead, they focused on preparation. Scientists continued research on advanced propulsion and defense systems. Engineers upgraded fleets and stations with technology that far surpassed anything the Council had imagined. Humans understood that patience and strategy could achieve what anger or confrontation never could. Meanwhile, rumors of the human silence spread across the galaxy. Some species whispered that humans had simply retreated out of fear, or that they had been defeated. Others speculated that humans were preparing some form of revenge. Many of these rumors were exaggerated, but the Council paid attention. Fear began to creep into the minds of leaders who had once dismissed humans as unpredictable but harmless. The unknown, after all, is often more frightening than the known. The humans themselves did not encourage these rumors. They did not leave messages or signals to provoke curiosity or fear. Their silence was intentional. It created uncertainty, and uncertainty forced others to reconsider assumptions. Humans had always been underestimated, and now their quiet withdrawal became the most effective demonstration of their strength. Human colonies were not isolated in their activities. Each location contributed to a larger network. Observers recorded anomalies in distant regions, mapped new star systems, and monitored resources that could be useful in the future. Training programs continued for new generations, ensuring that every human citizen, from the youngest to the oldest, understood the importance of discipline, strategy, and patience. No one wasted energy on anger or revenge. Humans did not need to react immediately because they knew the value of time. The first real signs of change began when communications from neighboring systems started to fail. Previously reliable trade channels became inconsistent, and the Council noticed the gaps. Initially, they assumed technical issues, blaming mismanagement or natural interference. But when the pattern repeated, it became clear that human withdrawal had effects far beyond what anyone had anticipated. Ships that relied on human maintenance started to malfunction. Research stations that had once shared crucial information with other species experienced delays in processing data. Even minor supply shortages, such as medical resources or agricultural materials, began to affect daily life in multiple sectors. The Council had thought humans were just another species to be controlled or ignored, but now their absence was causing real consequences in human colonies. Leaders monitored all of these developments. There was no celebration, only quiet acknowledgement. Humans understood that the galaxy was beginning to see the impact of their decision, and that careful observation would reveal even more over time. Children learning in schools were taught history, science, and strategy, but also patience and critical thinking. Humans prepared for the long term, knowing that true influence did not come from instant action, but from consistent, thoughtful planning. The Council, meanwhile, began to feel a creeping regret. Leaders who had supported the expulsion noticed that crises were becoming harder to manage. Systems that had relied heavily on human logistics and problem-solving were struggling. Delays were no longer minor inconveniences. They threatened stability in several regions. Some members began to question their earlier decision, but pride in politics prevented them from admitting their mistake. Rumors continued to spread about humans. Some claimed that humans had discovered new technologies or weapons that gave them unmatched power. Others whispered that humans had prepared secret fleets capable of defending themselves against any threat. All of these stories were only partly true, but the Council could not verify them, and the unknown created unease. Despite all this, humans did not act aggressively. They did not launch attacks or issue ultimatums. Their influence was quiet, measured, and deliberate. Every human who observed the galaxy understood that inaction could be just as powerful as action, as long as it was purposeful. By leaving the Council, humans had created a vacuum, and that vacuum was beginning to shape events across the stars. The more time passed, the more other species realized how much they had relied on humans without even noticing it. Transport systems, security protocols, emergency response networks, scientific research coordination, all had depended on human efficiency. Now, delays and failures forced the Council and other species to recognize that humans had been quietly holding many parts of the galaxy together. Their absence revealed the true scale of their contributions in human colonies. Preparation continued. Fleets were upgraded, research progressed, and communication networks were strengthened. Humans worked not to dominate, but to be ready for any eventuality. Their approach was methodical, ensuring that when the time came, they could act with precision and effectiveness. The galaxy was beginning to feel the impact of human absence, and humans were silently observing, learning, and waiting. Outside the human-controlled regions, alien species began to notice subtle changes. Supply shortages, delayed communication, and increased instability became common topics in Council discussions. Leaders began to worry. Some secretly sent scouts to investigate human colonies, only to find them bustling with activity and organization. It became clear that humans had not retreated out of fear. They had withdrawn to work in silence, building strength without drawing attention. The council started to question their assumptions. They had believed humans would panic or retaliate after being expelled. They had expected anger or protest, perhaps even threats. Instead, humans had shown restraint, focus, and patience beyond anything the council had anticipated. Their silence was not weakness. It was strategy. Human leaders knew that their patience was being observed. They did not need to react to the council's unease because the effects were already evident. The galaxy was beginning to realize that humans were not easily controlled or underestimated. Their quiet actions were shaping events in subtle, powerful ways. As the months passed, the consequences of human withdrawal became undeniable. Trade routes that had relied on human coordination faced delays. Star systems that depended on human technology struggled to maintain stability. Even minor incidents, such as medical emergencies or infrastructure failures, highlighted how humans had quietly held many parts of the galaxy together. The Council's decision to expel humanity was proving costly, though they had not yet fully grasped the magnitude of their mistake. In human colonies, life continued with purpose. Humans did not dwell on the Council's decisions or seek revenge. Instead, they focused on observation, preparation, and growth. Every individual understood the importance of patience and discipline. Quietly, humans were building a network of influence and capability that would allow them to act when the time was right. By remaining silent, humans had forced the Council to recognize their absence. Their withdrawal was not a retreat, but a demonstration of influence. Every system that struggled without humans, every delay and failure, was a reminder that humans had been more important than anyone had realized. The Council's decision had unintentionally highlighted the value of the very species they had sought to dismiss. As the first year passed since the expulsion, the effects became even more apparent. Systems that had once functioned smoothly now experienced recurring challenges. Leaders in the Council whispered of regret and concern. They had underestimated humans, and now they were beginning to see the consequences of their assumptions. Humans, however, remained calm. They continued their work quietly, never seeking credit or attention. Their focus was on preparation, on building strength, and on ensuring that when the right moment arrived, they could. Months passed, and the galaxy began to feel the absence of humans more than anyone had expected. Systems that had once thrived under human coordination now struggled. Supply chains, once seamless and reliable, became unpredictable. Medical stations faced shortages of essential equipment, and research projects stalled because humans had quietly maintained the networks that connected scientists across multiple sectors. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Humans were not just another species. They were the quiet foundation behind much of the order and stability everyone had taken for granted. The Council, which had voted to expel humanity, now faced the first hints of the consequences. Ships sent to patrol trade routes encountered delays and failures. Communication networks, once assumed to be self-sufficient, faltered. Even minor disputes between smaller species escalated into conflicts because no humans were present to mediate or coordinate peace efforts. Every problem reminded the Council of the humans they had dismissed, and a growing unease spread among its members. Back in human colonies, life continued as usual. People moved with calm efficiency, yet there was a quiet awareness of the galaxy's struggles. Humans did not celebrate these problems, and they did not intervene openly. Instead, they observed, noting where systems faltered, what weaknesses emerged, and which regions would benefit most from careful attention. When the time was right, human fleets patrolled their own space quietly, maintaining readiness without drawing unnecessary attention. Scientists pushed the boundaries of technology, developing advanced propulsion systems, defense protocols, and medical innovations. Engineers and strategists worked together, ensuring that every human colony could operate independently if needed. Humans understood that preparation was more valuable than confrontation, and patience was more powerful than immediate action. Meanwhile, the Council struggled to manage the ripple effects of human absence. Trade negotiations faltered because many routes had relied on human oversight. Research collaborations that once thrived began to collapse, leaving critical projects unfinished. Even the smallest logistical issues, such as delivery of food, fuel, or medical supplies, began to cause larger disruptions. Leaders who had supported humanity's expulsion now quietly questioned whether they had made a grave mistake. Speculation about human capabilities grew louder among the galaxy's civilizations. Some whispered that humans had discovered technologies the Council could not even imagine. Others speculated that humans were quietly preparing fleets, weapons, and strategies that would make them nearly unstoppable if provoked. The truth was more subtle. Humans were not preparing for revenge. They were preparing to be ready, ensuring that when the moment came, they could act effectively and decisively. But on their own terms. In human colonies, this preparation was methodical. Every generation was trained in critical thinking, strategy, and resilience. Education focused on understanding the galaxy's systems, the flow of trade, and the patterns of interstellar politics. Humans studied every species carefully, noting strengths, weaknesses, and tendencies. They were learning, not out of fear, but out of responsibility to themselves and to the future they were quietly shaping. As time went on, the consequences of human absence became impossible to ignore. Star systems that had relied heavily on human technology experienced delays in repairs and upgrades. Supply lines broke down, leaving communities struggling for essential resources. Human withdrawal revealed how much the galaxy had depended on them, often without realizing it. Every missed shipment, every failed communication, every stalled research project was a reminder of the value of human efficiency, foresight, and reliability. The Council began to take notice, though they still did not fully understand the situation. Leaders who had once been confident in their decision now convened emergency meetings, attempting to address the growing instability. How could we have underestimated them? One member asked, voice tinged with frustration. We thought they were unpredictable, maybe reckless. But they were never reckless, they were deliberate. And now we are paying the price. Even as the Council scrambled to restore order, humans remained calm. They observed the chaos without intervention, quietly gathering information and refining their plans. Every misstep the Council made, every system that struggled without human oversight, was noted. Humans were patient because they understood that timing mattered more than immediate action. Stories of human absence began to spread across the galaxy. Other species, some allies and some rivals, whispered about how humans had vanished from critical systems without explanation. Some believed that humans had retreated out of fear. Others suspected that humans were plotting something grand. Both assumptions were flawed. Humans were neither fearful nor plotting revenge. They were acting with a long-term strategy that the Council and other species could not yet see. In human colonies, leaders discussed these rumors with quiet amusement. They did not seek to correct misconceptions, nor did they feel the need to assert dominance. The galaxy would learn the truth in its own time. Meanwhile, humans focused on practical matters, maintaining security, advancing technology, and ensuring that every community could function independently. Human fleets operated silently across multiple sectors. They were ready to respond to threats or crises if needed, but they avoided unnecessary confrontation. Scientists continued research that pushed the limits of knowledge. Engineers developed systems that were more reliable, more efficient, and more advanced than anything the Council had expected from humans. Every advancement was made without fanfare, without announcement, and without provocation. The Council, meanwhile, grew increasingly uneasy. Trade networks faltered, research projects slowed, and small conflicts began to escalate in the absence of human coordination. Leaders whispered among themselves, trying to understand how a single species could have such a profound impact. Some began to suspect that humans had been quietly holding the galaxy together all along. The realization was uncomfortable, and pride prevented them from acknowledging it openly. Humans, of course, were aware of the Council's struggles. They observed quietly, never intervening unless necessary. Every crisis, every failed supply line, every conflict that arose without human guidance was recorded and analyzed. Humans did not take satisfaction in the chaos, but they understood that the galaxy was now beginning to recognize their importance without needing to boast or demand attention. As the first year of human absence drew to a close, the effects became more pronounced. Star systems that had relied on human logistics faced regular disruptions. Research collaborations broke down. Communications became slower and less reliable. Even small communities noticed shortages of essential resources. The galaxy, once stable, now felt the subtle but growing effects of losing the humans it had dismissed. Humans continued their work quietly, without drawing attention. Children learned history, strategy, and critical thinking. Engineers and scientists collaborated across colonies, sharing knowledge and improving systems. Leaders coordinated efforts without seeking recognition or reward. Every action was deliberate, designed to ensure that humanity could respond effectively whenever the time was right. Meanwhile, the Council grew more restless. Leaders who had once celebrated humanity's expulsion now faced mounting pressure from the consequences. Trade delays, research setbacks, and logistical failures forced them to reconsider the wisdom of their decision. Pride and fear made it difficult to admit, but doubt began to creep into the Council's chambers. Rumors about human capabilities continued to circulate. Some claimed that humans had developed advanced weapons and fleets in secret. Others speculated that humans were observing the galaxy, waiting for the perfect moment to intervene. The truth was more measured. Humans were not preparing to dominate or punish. They were preparing to ensure that when the right moment arrived, they could act effectively and decisively. Their silence was not weakness, it was strategy. Human colonies operated like a well-oiled machine. Every individual knew their role, and every system functioned efficiently. Communication networks were secure and robust. Fleets were upgraded and ready. Research projects continued at a pace that outstripped the Council's expectations. Humanity's strength was quiet but undeniable. The Council, meanwhile, began to feel a growing sense of unease. Every crisis that arose without human guidance highlighted their absence. Leaders began to recognize that humans had been more than just participants in the galaxy. They had been stabilizers, problem solvers, and silent organizers. The mistakes made in dismissing humans were becoming increasingly apparent. Even as the Council grappled with these realizations, humans remained calm and focused. They did not seek revenge, nor did they seek recognition. Their patience, preparation, and quiet efficiency were far more powerful than any display of anger or retaliation could have been. By withdrawing from the Council and allowing the galaxy to feel their absence, humans had demonstrated a strength that few other species could match. As time passed, the first signs of true change began to appear. Species that had once relied on human coordination were forced to innovate and adapt, but the gaps left by humans were still apparent. The Council slowly realized that the humans they had dismissed were not just participants, they were essential seed. As the months passed, the galaxy began to sense something unusual. Trade routes remained slower than before, communications were inconsistent, and minor conflicts escalated in unexpected ways. The Council tried to manage the situation, But every effort seemed to reveal just how much they had depended on humans without realizing it. While other species panicked or blamed one another, humans quietly observed everything from the shadows. They did not intervene openly, nor did they announce their presence. Their silence was deliberate, and it began to make other civilizations uneasy. Humans had not retreated in fear, as some had speculated. They had withdrawn to work with precision, to prepare, and to understand the galaxy on their own terms. In their colonies, humans studied everything: the patterns of trade, the behavior of other species, and even the council's internal politics. Every observation was recorded and analyzed, forming a vast network of intelligence that the council could not begin to imagine it was during this time that some scouts and explorers from various species began noticing strange occurrences in distant regions. Research stations appeared abandoned, communication arrays were damaged, and entire settlements were mysteriously deserted. No clear cause could be found. Some whispered of natural disasters or local conflicts, while others speculated about human involvement. But humans had not attacked or interfered. They had simply observed, allowing the galaxy to reveal its weaknesses and vulnerabilities on its own. This quiet vigilance allowed humans to detect something far more dangerous than the Council had imagined. Deep in the outer sectors, beyond the charted systems, anomalies appeared: disturbances in space that could not be explained. A few explorers reported seeing massive energy signatures moving across the void, leaving destruction in their wake. Colonies that had existed for decades were found empty, their inhabitants missing or vanished without a trace. These anomalies were subtle at first, but humans noticed patterns. They were not random events. Something massive was approaching, something capable of causing devastation across multiple systems. The Council, of course, remained unaware of the true scope of the threat. Leaders argued over minor issues, believing that human absence was the only problem. They dismissed the warnings of their scouts, attributing anomalies to natural phenomena or technical failures. Meanwhile, humans quietly mapped every anomaly, calculated trajectories, and developed potential strategies for defense. Their work was meticulous, focused entirely on preparation, rather than spectacle. In human colonies, scientists and engineers collaborated at a pace that was both precise and deliberate. Observatories monitored the distant anomalies continuously, while mathematicians calculated every possible outcome. Fleet commanders coordinated strategies that could respond to the threat efficiently, while ensuring that civilian colonies remained safe and stable. Humans worked in silence, aware that their preparation could make the difference between survival and disaster. Rumors about humans began to spread across the galaxy. Some believed that humans were secretly building advanced fleets and weapons, ready to strike the Council or other civilizations at the right moment. Others speculated that humans had discovered new forms of energy capable of changing the balance of power. The truth was simpler but far more effective. Humans were readying themselves to protect, to act when necessary, and to ensure the safety of the galaxy, all without the Council's permission or recognition. Every human in the colonies understood the importance of patience. Even the youngest were trained in strategy and observation. Education emphasized critical thinking, resilience, and long-term planning. Humans had learned that immediate action often created chaos, while careful preparation allowed for decisive results. Their silence had become a tool, unsettling other species and forcing them to reconsider their assumptions about human capabilities. Meanwhile, the anomalies continued to spread. Colonies far from the Council's oversight reported destruction. Energy surges that disabled communications, void storms that damaged infrastructure, and missing personnel. Scouts from other civilizations were unable to investigate effectively, often finding themselves delayed or redirected by circumstances beyond their control. Humans, observing from a distance, quietly noted every event, every outcome, and every weakness. They did not intervene yet. They simply prepared. The council began to notice the anomalies, though they misinterpreted their significance. Leaders argued, debated, and blamed one another. Some insisted it was the result of human absence, while others claimed it was natural phenomena. Still, the galaxy was changing in ways the council could not control. Every failure of communication, every breakdown in trade, and every delayed response only highlighted the importance of humans in maintaining stability. Humans, however, were far ahead in understanding the situation. They had predicted the arrival of this threat long before anyone else. Their fleets were strategically positioned, their technology optimized, and their colonies prepared for contingency. Every action was planned to minimize risk and maximize effectiveness. Even routine operations served dual purposes, maintaining normal life while contributing to a larger network of observation and readiness. Observers from other species began to notice human activity, though it was subtle. Ships moved quietly through sectors. Research stations maintained perfect coordination, and colonies operated with efficiency that other civilizations could only admire. The humans were not trying to impress anyone. Their work was focused entirely on practical preparation. But their quiet competence created unease, especially among council members who had underestimated them. As humans continued their observation, patterns in the anomalies became clearer. Energy surges, void disruptions, and abandoned colonies all pointed to a massive approaching threat. Humans began modeling multiple scenarios, preparing responses for every possible development. They coordinated their fleets, optimized supply chains, and ensured that every colony could operate independently if necessary. Their preparation was thorough and methodical, reflecting the discipline and foresight that had always defined humanity. The council, meanwhile, continued to struggle. Leaders who had once dismissed humans now realized their absence was critical. They began to piece together information about the anomalies, but lacked the coordination, technology, and strategy that humans had quietly developed. Panic began to rise, though few admitted it openly. They had underestimated humans, and now the consequences were becoming unavoidable. Humans, however, remained calm. They did not act rashly or seek recognition. They understood the value of patience and planning. Every decision was guided by observation, analysis, and careful strategy. Their fleets moved with precision, their colonies operated efficiently, and their scientists worked tirelessly to ensure that they were ready for the coming challenge. The anomalies grew closer, and the first real tests of human preparation began. Scouts reported regions where entire systems were destabilized. Supplies were missing, colonies were abandoned, and energy fields fluctuated dangerously. Humans responded quietly, coordinating efforts to monitor, contain, and understand the threat. There was no panic, no chaos, only calculated observation and readiness. Across the galaxy, the Council noticed the humans' activities and grew increasingly uneasy. Leaders debated how such a small population could maintain such efficiency and preparedness. Some began to suspect that humans had discovered something the Council did not understand, possibly a new form of energy or advanced technology. Others feared that humans had prepared fleets capable of overwhelming any opposing force. Yet, humans remained focused on the task at hand. Their goal was clear: understand the anomalies, prepare for their arrival, and ensure that the galaxy could withstand the threat. They did not seek fame, revenge, or recognition. Their actions were deliberate, practical, and focused entirely on outcomes. As the first year of observing the anomalies came to a close, humans had mapped the paths of the approaching threat, identified potential points of impact, and prepared contingency plans for every scenario. Their fleets were strategically positioned, their technology optimized, and their colonies ready to operate independently. Every action was deliberate, reflecting a level of preparation that few civilizations could comprehend. The Council, meanwhile, began to realize the gravity of their earlier decision. By expelling humans, they had lost access to the one species that had both the knowledge and the discipline to anticipate and prepare for such a threat. Panic and frustration began to spread among council members. They had underestimated humans, and now they faced consequences that could affect the entire galaxy. Humans, however, continued their work in silence. Their preparation was ongoing, precise, and methodical. Every system, every fleet, every colony contributed to a network of observation and readiness. Humans understood that when the time came to act, they would do so with efficiency and precision, and the galaxy would witness the true strength of a species that had always valued patience, strategy, and foresight over immediate action. By the end of this period, the stage was set. The Council was anxious. The galaxy was beginning to feel the consequences of human absence, and humans themselves were quietly ready for whatever came next. Their patience and preparation had transformed their silence into Poe. By the time the Council began to understand the anomalies, it was already too late to act alone. The first real signs of danger appeared near the outer systems. Energy fluctuations had grown more intense, and entire colonies were disappearing without a trace. Panic began to spread, though the Council still tried to maintain an appearance of control. Ships were scrambled to investigate, fleets were redirected, and scientists were ordered to study the phenomenon, but progress was slow. Without humans coordinating, many efforts were chaotic and inefficient. Humans, as always, observed quietly from their distant sectors. They had long anticipated the arrival of this threat, and every colony, every fleet, and every system under their control was prepared. Humans had studied the patterns of the anomalies for months, mapping every movement and predicting potential impact points with incredible accuracy. Their fleets were ready to respond. Their technology had been upgraded to its maximum potential, and their colonies were organized for rapid coordination if needed. The first reports that reached the Council caused confusion and fear. Entire settlements had been found abandoned, with energy signatures indicating powerful disruptions. Communication relays were destroyed, and navigation systems in some regions were failing. Council members argued over what to do. Some suggested evacuation of the most vulnerable sectors, while others pushed for military intervention. Yet none had the complete picture, and none had the preparation that humans had quietly achieved. Meanwhile, humans quietly mobilized their forces. Fleets were deployed to strategic locations, not for war, but for protection. Ships moved swiftly but silently through sectors, positioning themselves near colonies and critical infrastructure. Scientists sent teams to reinforce energy shields, repair communication arrays, and coordinate emergency protocols. Humans worked with a precision that was unmatched, and their efforts were invisible to those who did not know where to look. Within human colonies, every citizen played a role. Civilians managed logistics, ensuring supplies were ready and communications were uninterrupted. Engineers worked on fortifying structures and improving fleet systems. Strategists and fleet commanders coordinated movements, ensuring that every possible scenario had a contingency plan. Even the youngest members were trained to understand the importance of preparation and observation. For humans, every individual contributed to the larger plan. Rumors about humans began to circulate widely across the galaxy. Some speculated that humans had advanced technology far beyond anything else in the Council. Others whispered that humans had secret fleets capable of defending entire sectors. While these rumors were partially true, humans had no interest in spreading fear. They were not preparing to attack. They were preparing to act effectively when the time came, guided by logic and necessity rather than anger or vengeance. The Council, realizing they had underestimated humanity, began to panic. Leaders who had once dismissed the humans' capabilities now scrambled to gather information. Attempts to communicate with human colonies were met with silence, and this only added to their anxiety. For the first time, Council members understood that humans had not been idle. They had been observing, learning, and preparing quietly for months, anticipating events that the Council had barely begun to notice as the anomalies drew closer. Evidence of the threat's destructive power became undeniable. Entire star systems were destabilized. Energy waves disrupted navigation and communications, and colonies were left isolated. Some Council fleets encountered overwhelming forces they could not withstand. Panic spread among species that had long considered humans unpredictable but harmless. The galaxy was suddenly forced to confront a danger far greater than anyone had imagined. Humans, however, remained calm. Their preparation allowed them to act with precision rather than fear. Commanders issued orders in a controlled, deliberate manner. Fleets were deployed strategically to defend key regions and observe the threat. Scientists monitored the anomalies, predicting movements and potential outcomes. Engineers strengthened energy barriers and ensured that every system had a reliable communication network. Humans did not act impulsively, they acted efficiently, guided by careful analysis and foresight. The first encounters with the anomalies revealed the extent of the threat. Energy surges and void storms devastated colonies and fleets. Systems previously thought stable were affected, and chaos spread across regions. The Council tried to respond, but without coordination and preparation, their efforts were fragmented and largely ineffective. Each failure reinforced the growing realization that humans had been the true stabilizers of the galaxy. Within human sectors, the response was different. Fleets moved in harmony, reacting instantly to changes in the threat's trajectory. Energy barriers absorbed disruptions that would have crippled other civilizations. Evacuations were executed smoothly where necessary, and damaged systems were repaired faster than anyone could anticipate. Humans acted not only to protect themselves, but to ensure the survival of neighboring colonies and systems wherever possible. Their silent preparation was paying off, and the scale of their capability was becoming apparent. The Council, observing from afar, could no longer deny the humans' effectiveness. Leaders whispered in disbelief. How could a single species have prepared so thoroughly, predicted so accurately, and acted with such coordination? Attempts to contact humans for assistance were finally met with response, but the humans' messages were calm and instructive rather than panicked. They offered guidance, not commands, and coordinated relief without demanding recognition or control. For humans, the moment was not about showing superiority. It was about responsibility and logic. Their actions reflected a deep understanding of the galaxy, its systems, and its vulnerabilities. Every decision was deliberate. Every fleet movement and every repair operation was calculated to maximize protection and minimize loss. Humans were not acting for glory. They were acting because preparation and action were necessary. As the Council watched, humans demonstrated the power of foresight. Fleets moved to intercept destructive anomalies before they could reach critical systems. Colonies that might have been lost were defended with energy barriers and rapid response teams. Communication networks were stabilized, and research stations returned to operation despite previous disruptions. Humans acted seamlessly across vast distances, displaying coordination and efficiency that left the Council astounded. The anomalies, though powerful, were ultimately contained and redirected by the humans' efforts. Where other civilizations had struggled, humans succeeded. Their preparation, patience, and discipline had allowed them to act decisively at the perfect moment. The Council finally understood the cost of their earlier decision to dismiss humanity. They had underestimated a species that combined intelligence, foresight, and coordination in ways that no other civilization could match. Humans, however, did not celebrate. Their focus remained on ensuring stability, protecting colonies, and analyzing the anomalies. They understood that the crisis was not over, but they had demonstrated a level of preparedness and capability that the Council and the galaxy had never fully appreciated. By acting calmly and efficiently, humans transformed their earlier silence into undeniable power and influence. Council members, humbled and shaken, could not ignore the lesson. Humans had shown that true strength did not always come from aggression or loud displays of power. It came from patience, preparation, and quiet, consistent action. The Council's previous judgment that humans were reckless or dangerous was revealed to be short-sighted. In reality, humans had been planning and observing, and their actions had saved countless lives across multiple systems. By the end of this part of the story, the Council and the galaxy as a whole were forced to acknowledge a fundamental truth. Humans were not to be underestimated. Their silence had been strategic. Their preparation had been meticulous. Their response to the imminent threat had been precise and effective. The Council had underestimated them, and now they understood just how wrong they had been. Humans, as always, remained focused on the greater purpose. They did not act for recognition or reward. Their patience, foresight, and calm efficiency had allowed them to handle a threat that no other species could have managed alone. The galaxy had begun to see humanity in a new light, not as a reckless or minor species, but as a civilization capable of extraordinary planning, coordination, and strength. The fifth part of the story ends here, showing the moment the Council realizes the true value of humanity. Their quiet observation, preparation, and patience had allowed them to face the approaching threat with precision, revealing a level of capability and foresight that left the galaxy astonished and humbled. The galaxy had changed. The anomalies that had once threatened distant colonies were now being monitored, contained, and redirected by the humans' careful planning. Fleets moved silently across sectors, energy barriers shimmered around key systems, and communication networks hummed with precision. Where chaos had begun, order was returning, not because the Council had taken charge, but because humans had acted quietly, methodically, and with foresight beyond anyone's expectation. The Council, for the first time, felt real unease. They had expelled humans, believing them to be unpredictable and a minor nuisance. They had expected panic, protest, or perhaps a weak retaliation. Instead, humans had withdrawn into silence, observed, and prepared. And now, when the galaxy faced a threat it could barely understand, humans were the ones managing the crisis effectively. Council members whispered nervously in their chambers, unable to hide their growing respect and fear for the species they had dismissed. Humans had never acted arrogantly. Even in the midst of the crisis, every move was deliberate, controlled, and precise. Fleets that could have been overwhelming were positioned for protection rather than dominance. Colonies that could have been fortified as weapons were strengthened simply to ensure survival and stability. Every system was interconnected in a network that allowed humans to respond faster than anyone else could imagine. Across the galaxy, the anomalies began to interact with human-controlled sectors. Massive energy surges threatened unprepared colonies, void storms disrupted navigation, and entire settlements were at risk of being destroyed. Yet humans moved with quiet efficiency. Fleet commanders coordinated in real time. Scientists recalculated trajectories and energy dispersal, and engineers reinforced structures with rapid deployment teams. Every action was synchronized. Every decision was calculated. The Council attempted to intervene, but their efforts were fragmented. Fleets arrived late, research stations were underprepared, and communication networks failed repeatedly. Panic began to ripple through Council members who had once thought humanity could be ignored. They realized too late that humans had been quietly holding together much of the galaxy's stability, not for recognition, but out of discipline and responsibility. In human colonies, leaders remained calm. They were prepared for every possibility, from minor disruptions to widespread destruction. They had trained for this moment without any need for acknowledgement. Every citizen, from young recruits to experienced commanders, understood the importance of patience, observation, and precise action. Humans had turned their earlier silence into a form of power that the Council could not challenge. The first real test came when a massive energy surge approached a heavily populated system. Council fleets scrambled, sending warnings and preparing defenses, but their actions were chaotic. Humans, observing the situation from nearby sectors, acted immediately. Fleets moved into position to redirect the energy surge. Energy barriers stabilized key structures, and emergency protocols evacuated vulnerable areas efficiently. By the time the Council realized what was happening, humans had already contained the threat. The system was safe, largely thanks to their preparation and foresight. Other species watched in awe and confusion. They had expected humans to be reactive, unpredictable, or aggressive. Instead, humans were calm, methodical, and effective. They had anticipated every challenge and prepared for it without drawing attention. Fleets that had been underestimated, colonies that had seemed ordinary, and technology that had appeared basic now revealed layers of strategy and efficiency that no one could have imagined. Council members finally attempted to communicate with human leaders directly. Messages were sent, not as commands, but as requests for coordination. Humans responded, not with arrogance or retaliation, but with clarity and guidance. They outlined strategies to stabilize affected systems, suggested ways to reinforce fleets, and offered insight into how the anomalies behaved. It was the first time many council members realized that humans had been silently observing and analyzing the galaxy all along. Humans, however, did not gloat or demand recognition. Their goal had never been to punish the Council for underestimating them. They acted out of responsibility, logic, and preparation. Their calm efficiency became the benchmark for other species, and slowly the Council began to understand the cost of their earlier decision. By dismissing humans, they had lost the guidance, coordination, and foresight that only humans could provide. Meanwhile, the anomalies continued to test the galaxy's systems. Fleets and colonies that had relied on humans now struggled to respond on their own. Ships became lost, research stalled, and critical systems faced near collapse. Each failure was a stark reminder of humanity's absence before they chose to act. When humans finally engaged, every system under their care was stabilized quickly and efficiently, revealing the full scope of their preparation. In the colonies, civilians watched the fleets move and the systems stabilize. They understood that their quiet preparation and training had made the difference. Every action, every fleet deployment, every repair operation was a testament to the patience, discipline, and foresight that had defined humans for generations. Their calm, deliberate approach was now the backbone of survival in a galaxy that had once doubted them. The Council, for the first time, felt the weight of their mistake. They had assumed humans would react with fear, anger, or chaos. Instead, humans had acted with logic, patience, and responsibility. Every challenge, from the smallest supply disruption to the largest energy surge, had been managed efficiently by humans. Pride and arrogance had led the Council to underestimate them. And now they were witnessing humanity's true strength in real time. As the anomalies began to subside, thanks to human intervention, the galaxy slowly returned to a state of stability. Systems that had been threatened were repaired, colonies were reestablished, and fleets returned to their sectors. Humans had not sought to dominate or control. They had acted to ensure survival, stability, and order. Their patience, preparation, and silent observation had proven more powerful than any council vote, decree, or threat. Council leaders now faced a difficult choice. They could attempt to regain control, But humans had demonstrated that authority without preparation was meaningless. They had been humbled, and many realized that humans could no longer be dismissed or underestimated. The galaxy had changed, not through war or aggression, but through careful planning, patience, and action at the right moment. Human leaders did not seek revenge or recognition. They quietly debriefed their fleets, assessed damage, and improved strategies for the future. Their work was methodical, ensuring that the galaxy remained safe and prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. For humans, the lesson was clear. Patience, preparation, and calm observation were more powerful than any council decision or vote dot in the aftermath. Other species began to respect and even admire humans. They had seen firsthand what disciplined preparation and quiet action could achieve. Rumors of humans being reckless or weak were replaced by stories of their patience, foresight, and effectiveness. Council members, humbled, began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity, acknowledging that a species that acted deliberately could achieve far more than one that acted impulsively. Even as the galaxy stabilized, humans continued their work. Observatories monitored for new threats, fleets trained and upgraded, and colonies maintained high levels of efficiency. Their silent vigilance became a model for other species. They did not act for glory or recognition. Their actions were guided by responsibility, foresight, and the understanding that the galaxy was interconnected and fragile. The Council, now fully aware of the consequences of underestimating humans, could only watch as humanity quietly shaped the course of events. They had learned a valuable lesson. Dismissing humans had been a mistake, one that could have cost countless lives. But through patience, observation, and careful action, humans had turned silence into power and strategy into results. By the end of this period, the galaxy understood a new truth. Humans were not reckless or ordinary. They were disciplined, thoughtful, and prepared. They had demonstrated that true strength came not from aggression or noise, but from careful planning, patience, and decisive action at the right moment. The Council's regret was real, but humans had already moved beyond the need for acknowledgement. They had ensured the galaxy's survival, secured their place among civilizations, and shown that underestimated strength could be far more powerful than expected. Humans remained calm, focused, and prepared for whatever came next. Their actions had transformed the galaxy's understanding of power, patience, and responsibility. The Council had been forced to recognize their mistake. The anomalies had been contained, and the systems of the galaxy had been stabilized, all without humans ever needing to raise their voices or seek revenge. The story ends with humans standing quietly but firmly as the backbone of the galaxy. Their silence had been strategic, their preparation meticulous, and their actions decisive. The Council had underestimated them, but humans had proven that patience, foresight, and calm efficiency were the greatest forms of power. In the end, the galaxy learned that to dismiss humans was to misunderstand the meaning of true strength, and that silence, when paired with preparation,